Good morning. It's December 28th. This is to my liberal friends. If you don't think people are getting tired of high taxes and heavy-handed regulations by Democratic politicians, you would only have to look at the migration patterns of people. We saw it firsthand in the last census. Something happened that I never thought I would see. California lost a seat in Congress. Now, it's still the largest delegation in Congress, but that loss should have been a signal to the legislators in Sacramento that something was amiss. But they kept right on marching along with their one ultra-liberal policy after another, one new tax after another. And it's becoming apparent that the people are moving from these states to states that are more friendly to them tax-wise and freedom-wise. The U.S. population increased by 1.6 million between July 22 and July 23, with states in the South accounting for 1.4 million of the growth. Leading the boom were Texas, Florida, Georgia, South Carolina, and Tennessee. Driving their growth was migration from other states. 8 states saw the population declines, with New York the biggest, 101,000 people. California and Illinois. They can blame population flight. California lost the most residents to other states, 338,000, followed by New York, Illinois, New Jersey, Massachusetts, and Maryland. Now, Democrats can brush this outward migration off, but they do so at their own peril. In the short term, nothing will be changed. But after the next census in 2030, there might be significant changes that would alter the election maps. California, New York, Illinois, Minnesota, Rhode Island, and Oregon, on present trend, would lose a combined 12 House seats in the 2030 reapportionment, which is as many as Florida, Georgia, Texas, Tennessee, North Carolina, Utah, and Idaho would collectively gain. Think of that as members of Congress and in the presidential election, electoral votes. The states that are gaining people are mostly red states, and that would mean more Republicans in Congress and fewer Democrats. Now, liberals try to counter that by saying those that migrate will take their liberal politics with them and help turn those states blue. But it hasn't panned out that way so far. As an example, a few years Democrats were salivating over the prospect of turning Texas blue. Now, that still might end up happening sometime in the future, but as of now, as the Daily Beast reports, Democrats just hope to stop the bleeding. California migrants to Texas are polling 57% conservative versus only 27% liberal. In the 2018 Senate race between the Democrat Beto O'Rourke and GOP incumbent Ted Cruz, Cruz won newcomers to Texas by a larger margin than natives, 15 points for migrants versus only 3 points for natives. And so the people moving to Texas are going there because they want to be conservatives. In Texas, there's been a noticeable shift in Hispanic voters to the Republican side. And that phenomenon is being repeated in other states as well. Similar shifts have happened in Florida. A swing state nationally, Florida has been Republican at state level for some time. Still, Democrats historically had an edge in registered voters. But there's a huge shift toward Republicans during and in the wake of the pandemic. And as the policies of Governor Ron DeSantis proved very popular among national Republicans and made him a presidential contender, he was overwhelmingly reelected along with most Republicans in Florida. They liked what he was doing. Long a major recipient of newcomers, Republicans passed Democrats and registered voters in Florida in December 21 and had a 383,000 advantage by December 22, which rose to 436,000 by this March. The idea of turning red states blue has been a bust in other states as well. Migration is also upending traditional Republican politics in entrenched red states, such as Idaho and Montana. Migration has brought an influx of new conservative voters with a different profile and orientation. They're more highly educated, often have professional class jobs or significant financial assets, and are coming from blue states like California and Washington. Having lived under liberal hegemony, they're eager to support a conservative one in the new states with a posture that's aggressive and more explicitly anti-liberal. The New York Times got into the political migration game when it ran a story arguing that Montana had taken a hard turn to the right. Republicans have, according to the Times, quote, managed to secure an ironclad grasp over state government, end quote. The Time perspective is not the only one. A viral Substack post argued that there's going to be a war in Montana, caused in part by an influx of high-income liberals into Bozeman and other towns, putting the squeeze on locals of more modest means. How that sorts out politically in a thinly populated state like Montana, where it doesn't take many newcomers to make a difference, is yet to be seen. But so far, it seems to be working in favor of the more conservative Republicans, and that means Jon Tester is waffling all over the place on his positions as he's running for re-election. Tester's typical of being a liberal in Washington, but trying to pretend like he's conservative when he's back home in Montana. The migration from blue states to red states by U.S. citizens might be why so many Democrats are for opening the borders. Most of these migrants are now ending up in blue states, and when a census is done, it counts everyone living in a state to apportion congressional seats. That might be hoping these illegal immigrants of today will help balance the numbers in the next census in 2030. The only snag in that thought process is that many of those here illegally tend to avoid being counted. They don't fill out the forms because they're afraid that they might be discovered or prosecuted in some way. That's not really true, but that's what they think. So this has been To My Liberal Friends. Thanks for listening.